This is what Babi Yar looks like today. It is the scene of the single largest mass shooting murder in one location in history. Over a few hours on Monday the 29th of September and Tuesday the 30th of September 1941, 33,771 people were murdered by the Einsatzgruppen. The site you see here is completely different to what the site looked like in 1941. Then it was a deep ravine, but the topography has completely changed since then due to a number of factors, including blowing up parts of the walls of the ravine to hide the crime, digging up the bodies that were buried there almost 2 years later, industrial development, a major mudslide, and finally landscaping to form the park that you see in this video, which was filmed in May 2022. Unlike most Holocaust-related sites, Babi Yar is within a large city and it's easily accessible via public transport. In my opinion, a city park with its memorials and references to Jewish life before the Holocaust is a fitting reminder of what happened here. Paul Blobel commanded Einsatzkommando 4A, part of Einsatzgruppe C, which followed the 6th Army in Ukraine and southern Russia. He was directly responsible for murdering around 60,000 people in 1941. As he explained under interrogation and at his trial after the war, police and auxiliary units would round up the people to be killed, graves would be dug, and the victims would be brought to the killing site and murdered. He used a method of killing whereby the victims would be brought to the killing spot in groups of around 10 to 15 people. They would kneel at the edge of the grave and be shot by firing squad. The first killings for which he was responsible took place near the Polish town of Łódź on the 27th of June 1941, only 5 days after the invasion of the Soviet Union. His murder spree then continued for the next few months. Kiev had been captured only a few days before the Babi Yar massacre took place. The Battle of Kiev, in my opinion, was the greatest military victory of all time. 2/3 Soviet prisoners of war were taken in a huge enveloping action. The army was followed on the 19th of September 1941 by an advanced detachment of the Sonderkommando 4A, led by two Obersturmführers, August Hefner and Adolf Janssen. This demonstrates that the plan was to kill the Jews of the city very quickly. The excuse they used was that Red Army engineers had had the time to booby-trap a number of buildings in Kiev, which led to a number of deaths both amongst local civilians and German personnel. One of the explosions hit the headquarters of Army Group South on the 24th of September. On the 26th of September 1941, General Kurt Eberhard, the designated Kiev city commander, met with Blobel, the SS and police leader, SS Obergruppenführer Friedrich Jeckeln, the commander of Einsatzgruppe C, Otto Rasch, and other SS functionaries such as SS Obersturmführer August Hefner, who gave an account of the meeting after the war. This meeting took place at the very same Army Group South rear headquarters that had been bombed only 2 days earlier. There, they decided that they would kill the Jews of Kiev and arranged how the killings would take place. As Blobel did not have enough men, he was to be aided by others under the command of Rasch, as well as various German police battalions. It was probably agreed here that the method of killing would be different to that which Blobel usually used. At Babi Yar, the victims were forced to lie down on top of people who had already been shot, and then they were killed individually. The victims were not rounded up but ordered to gather. On the 28th of September 1941, around 200 posters went up around Kiev ordering Jews to report to a specific location near the train station, giving the idea that people would be moved out by rail. However, the poster shown here does have something rather curious about it. In German, it says that all Jews must, using the correct word for Jews, but in both Russian and Ukrainian, the word Yidi is used. It's a negative word for Jews. It's something like the N word, and it's something that one should not really use. The translation of the word German Jude is Evrei in correct Russian. I think there are two possible ways of explaining this. Either the person or people doing the translation were showing their own anti-Semitism, or they may have used this language as a covert warning that nothing good was going to happen. If the latter, then it certainly didn't work. The poster reads as follows from the Russian. All the Yids of the city of Kiev and its vicinity must appear on Monday, 29th of September 1941 by 8 in the morning at the corner of Melenkova and Doktorevskaya streets next to the cemetery, bring documents, money and valuables, and also warm clothes, bed linen, etc. Any Yids who do not follow this order and are found elsewhere will be shot. Any citizens who enter the dwellings left by the Yids and help themselves to what they find there will be shot. 33,771 people responded to this call, and they were murdered over the following 2 days. Once the killing was complete, Wehrmacht engineers blew up the sides of the walls of the ravine to hide traces of the crime. Sometime later, Blobel was driving past the site when disturbances in the ground were noted, probably caused by the decomposition of so many people in one location. Blobel made a joke up about it, saying that they were his Jews. Blobel was relieved of his command in January 1942, possibly because of his alcoholism. However, he was given a new job, which was described as a particularly dirty job. It appears as though he spoke to Reinhard Heydrich, who was in charge of the Reich Security Head Office. Heydrich then referred him to Heinrich Müller, who was head of the Gestapo. Either Heydrich or Müller ordered him to find a way of disposing of the corpses of the murdered people. This was called Aktion 1005 or Sonderaktion 1005, and those units that carried out the work were known as Kommando 1005 or Sonderkommando 1005. The first record that we have of it is correspondence between Müller and Martin Luther of the German Foreign Office, dated the 28th of February 1942. The question, of course, now is why destroy the corpses? There are two reasons. The first could be that the amount of corpses did affect the groundwater in places where it was high, and this was undoubtedly the case at Auschwitz. However, there's a second reason, which is the discovery of the crime. The war became global with Hitler's declaration of war against the United States on the 11th of December 1941. The Soviets were advancing in the east, pushing the Wehrmacht back from Moscow. Nazi crimes were being uncovered just as the advancing Germans had discovered Soviet crimes earlier in the year. To my way of thinking, the Nazis realized that they might lose the war, therefore they sought to hide their crimes. Or maybe it's not so much that they might lose the war, or rather that they would lose the war. Blobel, however, did not know yet how to get rid of the bodies. In December 1941, the death camp at Helmland ab Nerum started to murder the Jews and Gypsies of the surrounding area in specially prepared homicidal gas vans. The bodies of the victims were buried in graves in the Zhuchov forest to the northwest of the village. Blobel went to Łódź with his driver and 2 assistants and started to investigate means of disposing of the bodies at the site of the forest camp. As he had seen how flamethrowers worked in World War I, he tried this method as well as incendiary devices. This did not work very well as it set the forest alight. A method using railway grids to alternate corpses with wood and other materials was used, which Franz Stangl, commandant of the Sobibor and Treblinka death camps, said was invented by Blobel, although it may have been invented by a member of Stangl's staff at Treblinka, Hubert Floss. This method was used to dispose of the bodies at the death camps at Belzec, Sobibor and Treblinka, and was used for a short time also at Auschwitz. The Aktion 1005 then set up camps to train other personnel in how to destroy bodies at Lwów in Galicia in Poland and Mogilev in Belarus. In the summer of 1943, Sonderkommando 1005A was set up in Kiev, and a second unit was set up in Dnipropetrovsk, now Dnipro, by Hans Cerns, who was to coordinate the destruction of corpses in Ukraine. Because of the number of corpses at Babi Yar, both units had to come together at Kiev. A unit consisted of around 7 or 8 SD Sicherheitsdienst officers and maybe as many as 50 police officers. The manual work was done by prisoners, usually taken from concentration camps, ghettos, prisons, or even POW camps. These slave laborers were expected to open the graves using shovels, then pull out the bodies using ropes, metal rods, or their bare hands and place them on the pyre for burning. The order was to use Jewish prisoners, but by the middle of 1943 they were hard to find. In the case of Babi Yar, the labour was supplied by the nearby Sirets concentration camp, which had been set up only a few hundred metres from the Babi Yar ravine in June 1942. The camp held those perceived as being opponents of the Nazi regime, as well as skilled Jews. It was also used as a place of execution. The orders of Blobel for Sonderkommando 1005 was that once work was completed, then the prisoners who worked at the site were to be killed. Blobel had a particular interest in the Babi Yar site. After all, he had played a major part in the killings. The destruction of the corpses started on the 19th of August 1943 when the SS brought around 100 Soviet POWs to the camp and ordered them to disinter the bodies. Another group of prisoners went to the nearby Jewish cemetery in order to bring back marble headstones which were to be used as the foundation for a pyre. The pyre was then built up from these stones in alternating layers of wood and bodies. One of the prisoners, Efim Vikis, later said that the pyre was as high as a 2-story house. However, the prisoners were able to secretly arm themselves using bits of metal and other implements they found. On the night of the 29th of September 1943, when the Nazis ordered the construction of a new pyre, as the camp was being dismantled and there were no bodies left to burn, the prisoners came to the conclusion that that was for them. Then an inmate revolt broke out. The prisoners overpowered the guards, allowing 15 people to escape. One of them was Vladimir Davidov, who later served as a witness at the Nuremberg trials. Among other escapees were Fyodor Davertany, Jakub Kappa, Philip Vikis, Leonard Karash, I. Brodsky, Leonid Kadomsky, David Butnik, Fyodor Yershov, Yakov Steyuk, Simon Berland, Vladimir Kotya, and others. The 311 inmates who were unable to get out were murdered. The destruction of the bodies came in the nick of time as far as the Nazis were concerned. Just over 1 month after the completion of the task, Kiev was retaken by the Red Army. However, the burning of the bodies was a pointless exercise if it were meant to hide the crime. People I interviewed in the 1990s and the 2000s in southeastern Poland said that the soot from the pyres at Bełżec could be felt as much as 20 kilometers away and that they could not open their windows during the height of summer. That was in the Polish countryside. Kyiv was the third largest city in the Soviet Union, and everyone there must have known what was happening. Shortly after the Red Army took Kyiv, Soviet authorities took a group of American, British and Soviet correspondents to the site of the Babi Yar massacre. Bill Downs from CBS and Bill Lawrence from the New York Times were amongst those who interviewed 3 Jewish former prisoners of war, Efim Vilkis, Leonid Ostrovsky and Vladimir Davidov, who had been forced to burn the corpses of the murdered. An article appeared in Newsweek in December 1943 relating to Babi Yar. As far as the German staff from Kyiv was concerned, once the bodies of the September 1941 killings had been destroyed and Sirets prisoners murdered, the men from Sonderkommando 1005B got out of the way of the advancing Red Army. They went south to Kryvyi Rih and from there continued to Nikolaev. There, at least 30 Jewish prisoners had to open several mass graves and burn more than 3,000 bodies. The workers were shot in the second half of December 1943, after which the members of the commando enjoyed a Christmas party. After a break between Christmas and New Year 1944, the commando was deployed east of Nikolaev. At least 10 and possibly as many as 15 prisoners had to work on graves and pyres before they too were shot and their bodies burned. The ground, of course, was hard because of the winter, and so at the end of January the commando went to Zakopane in the Tatras in southern Poland for a 1-month holiday, which included a skiing course. I've prepared a number of videos relating to the Einsatzgruppen and the killings at Babi Yar, as well as in other locations. My historical speciality is the Holocaust. I've done many years of work investigating this in Poland, and if you're interested in knowing more, then you might like to subscribe. I upload every Friday at 2000 hours, and sometimes I upload at other times as well. So if you'd like to know when I'm uploading, then please subscribe and press the bell. Thanks very much for listening.